Good morning and welcome to Intuity's first Tech Talk of 2017. My name is Larry Balon. I'm a system engineer based out of the U.S. I have two peers with me today. I have Pete Bartz. He's also a system engineer out of the U.S. He'll be doing the demonstration portion on our SurePath Application Path module. And we also have Kevin Froment, who's our digital content strategist, who will provide us with an overview of Entuity training programs. These Tech Talks are designed for our customers and technical members of our authorized reseller community. These sessions are recorded and they will be available on demand from the Intuity YouTube Center shortly after they're recorded today. They are a good resource for learning about our product and reviewing features that you might be interested in implementing. There are a few housekeeping chores before we get into today's presentation and demo. The call is on mute mode to mute any outside interference that may come about during the presentation. Feel free to ask questions anytime through the chat panel. We'll have time at the end of this to take questions that have been posted, so let's get started. SurePath is a feature of Intuity 16.5. So everything that we're going to be demonstrating today will be utilizing Intuity's latest release, which is 16.5. I'm going to describe some of the ways that SurePath can be used to enhance what you're already doing with the Intuity base product. And then after that, Pete will give us a short demonstration on some of those potential use cases. And then Kevin will give us an overview of training, and then we'll have time for questions at the very end. So why SurePath? Application performance definitely requires knowing what parts of the network support particular applications. One of the missing features from many of today's application performance monitoring products is that the network infrastructure piece is the missing link. SurePath adds that capability to trace applications through the network infrastructure and gives you insight on how applications traverse through the network. You can also alert on when applications change as well, change paths. So what does SurePath deliver? It basically allows you to select a point A and a point B within your network infrastructure and to trace that path through the network. It usually takes less than 30 seconds. Typically, though, it takes a few seconds to trace a path through the network. There's a small software footprint that's utilized. A lot of what SurePath does leverages what the Intuity software has already discovered and is monitoring through the network. Our SurePath algorithm is not dependent on routing or switching protocols. And again, it's designed for businesses wanting to focus on critical applications. I'll cover a few potential use cases or pain points that customers experience and where SurePath can be utilized to help there. Many of our customers today deploy wide area networks that utilize both a primary and a backup circuit across a wide area network. Remote sites can switch to these backup circuits, and in many cases, administrators do not know that they're on the backup circuits. The backup circuits are typically much more expensive than the dedicated primary circuits. SurePath allows monitoring of remote sites, and you can actually set a reference path. So if the path deviates from the primary to a backup WAN circuit, you'll be automatically notified that the path has changed. Another example of where SurePath can be used is, in many cases, poor performing applications at remote sites are not the result of a hard failure. Problems can result in poor response time and so forth. So one of the things that SurePath can do is to provide path monitoring for core network services such as DNS or domain name service. and that will allow you to monitor a service like that and alert if there's problems or deviation in the path of that particular service. One of the other problems that can occur in networks today is that there are route symmetry issues. Most modern networks are architected with multiple paths from one point to another within the network. When route symmetry or asymmetric routing problems occur, again, it can impact the performance of your applications, but again, it doesn't show up as a hard failure such as a circuit failure or an overloaded circuit. So this allows you to, again, do periodic path traces to determine whether or not the route has deviated from a reference path. And finally, this is actually a use case from one of Intuity's production customers. They've utilized SurePath to basically document that their disaster planning and disaster recovery plan works. They utilize SurePath to document the paths that were taken during normal operation. They switched over to test their to run a disaster recovery test. The paths were traced again to ensure that they were taking the appropriate backup paths, and then after the disaster recovery test was completed, they used SurePath again to verify that the circuits had returned to their normal paths. So basically, SurePath is now included as a module as part of the Intuity core product. This again is with 16.5. There are 5 complementary paths that are included as part of the base software, so that allows you to test the functionality, and if you decide that you need additional paths to monitor, those can be added and licensed from Intuity or from an authorized reseller. Application path events are generated when paths deviate from their reference path. These events can be forwarded to, for example, TrueSight, Operations Manager, for faster problem resolution. And because this is an all-in-one solution, it makes it easier and less costly to implement and share data. And with that, I'm going to turn the presentation over to Pete Bartz, who will give us a demonstration of SurePath and some of its capabilities.
Thanks, Larry, and good morning, good afternoon, everybody. Just give me a second to get my screen shared. And Larry, can you see my screen on your end?
Yes, I can, Pete.
Wonderful, thank you. So what I'd like to do today is expand upon some of the use cases that Larry brought up just a minute ago. I'll show you a number of examples of some paths that I've got built in my lab that really address some of these fundamental use cases that we've heard back from some of our customers already. One of the interesting things is as we talk to more and more people about SurePath, we end up coming up with more and more use cases. It's interesting. We think of a number of things. Customers will talk about that with some of our customers, and they'll say, well, what about this? So it's very interesting over time as to how we've expanded our thinking about how you can actually leverage SurePath within your monitoring environment. So the first use case that I'm going to leverage is going to really be applied over the topology that you see here. Actually, all the use cases are going to leverage this topology. This will be our base. So what we've got here is a small routed network. I've just got an OSPF routing topology right here. So I've got some resiliency across my 3 sites here. So if I do need to speak from a remote set of users in Brazil to an application farm up in Mexico City, I've got a number of ways to get there. And I'll talk in some of the other use cases too on how we're going to actually leverage some of the resiliency that I've built into my routing topology to understand where I've got some interesting anomalies that might take place. The first use case that we're going to leverage is really talking about that redundant path and application path awareness. So in a case where I'm connecting from Brazil. I've got a group of users sitting in Brazil in a remote office. They're connecting into a web services application in Mexico City. The route that I'm going to take is either going from Texas to Minnesota to Mexico City or directly from Austin, Texas into Mexico City. Now, you would actually think that this route directly would be the most effective one. The problem with this is my backup link. This is a very slow 1 megabit link. It's very costly. It's got a lot of latency behind it. And my preferred links are actually 2 hops, but they're much faster. These are gigabit links. These are low latency links. So from an application performance perspective, I would much rather be a user in Brazil talking over this little longer route than going over the shorter route. So the first example that I'm going to show you is going to leverage a path that I've actually got set up that is looking at the context of a Brazil user talking to a finance application in Mexico City. If I select on that path, this is from the path summary page, you can actually see the current path. So pretty straightforward. I'm talking to a number of devices in Brazil. I'm hopping over to Texas, to Minnesota, to Mexico City, and ultimately to the server farm in Mexico City. Now this is the current path. I can very easily take a look at what my reference path is because this is really the gold standard that I've got set up. When I define the path, I actually set my reference path and I defined it to be this route. So in a case where I would make a change to the network or something would happen in the network, this might be something that a service provider is changing or I've made an erroneous configuration change. This path might deviate to something else, and it's something that I want to know about. So being proactive and being aware of that change, even though it might not be reflected as a result of some specific outage, is something that I do want to know about. So let's actually go in and make a change. So I'm going to use the Intuity configuration management system actually to make this change. Certainly for demo purposes and even production purposes, this is an efficient method to track and make some automated changes on your network. So I'm going to make an OSPF cost change. This is something where, I'm an engineer in the system. I'm setting some OSPF parameters on a router. I accidentally hit a couple extra zeros on the cost. So I've actually made this change. This is going to go out and change the OSPF metrics on my network. It really doesn't take very long to do that. If I take a look at a dashboard that I've got set up right here, you can see that I've already submitted the configuration task to make the OSPF changes. My current path, again, is highlighted through these high-speed links. But if I go over and I could wait 5 minutes and wait for the path to refresh itself, but let's go just do it manually here. So I'll just run discovery over this path. It's in progress. If I go back and take a look at it here, oops, click the right button here, Pete. There we go. Click on the path. You can see now that my path has changed. So again, paths can automatically be set up to rediscover themselves every 5 minutes. I just push the button to run it even a little bit quicker. So I've got a deviation from my standard path. If I take a look at the dashboard that I've got set up here that's highlighting my current topology, you can see my topology map is highlighting the current path. It's changed to show the slower link. And you can actually see that I've got a deviation event here as well. So anytime you've got a case where I've got access into from a remote site into an application farm, these paths can be set up to run every 5 minutes. You can very quickly see any changes in the topology and the behavior, because if I look at this link is a 1 meg link. Anytime someone's going to be doing some high-speed transactions from this side over to here, this is going to be an application performance issue. Also in the case where, say this is a DNS server, I've got enterprise DNS set up in my various data centers, and these remote locations are set up to leverage this DNS server. I've also now got a way to track how the connectivity and what the network path is between a set of users and their corresponding DNS. Say you're using Anycast for DNS, you could actually set a path up to talk to that Anycast address, and if that DNS server moves around your network, you're going to be able to see the changes for that. Now, why would you care? One of the reasons you'd care from a DNS standpoint is because if you're injecting higher latency into that DNS process, anytime you're running a web application, you're doing a lot of DNS resolution. If DNS is slow, you're going to have an application performance issue. It's not going to be the application, it's actually going to be the network. But it's not going to be a traditional part of the network in where you would think about a failure on the network as being the problem. This is just part of my network. I built this topology to be resilient. Unfortunately, I didn't realize that the speed of this link is really causing transaction delays from one side to the other. Those really are part of the first two use cases that Larry spoke about, where you're looking at path redundancy or network, a level of network resiliency, and being able to track changes across that, and also looking at targeting a specific kind of a network service application like DNS or DHCP to see if there's changes getting to those type of infrastructure resources as well. Now let's talk about another use case, and this is route symmetry. If I go back to the topology that we started with, you can see that I've got, again, OSPF connections. Now, in the case of applications, things like load balancers and firewalls in many applications don't like, they like to have symmetric routing. So things where I've got traffic between Texas and Minnesota, if I talk from Texas to Minnesota and I want to talk from Minnesota back to Texas, if I take a different route going back, that's not symmetric. And sometimes load balancers and firewalls and different application sets they expect to see traffic coming back directly from the place you sent it. So one of the things with route symmetry is if it happens on your network, it can be really difficult to find. Once you find it, you usually find that it's a configuration issue, but it can take you a while to find. And in the midst of that, you're actually seeing, probably a fair number of application performance issues, if not even direct outages. So in my case, what I've done is we'll take a look at my path, the paths that I've got set up on my network. I've actually set up a number of paths to actually specifically target route symmetry. I've got a path from Minnesota to Austin, and the reverse from Austin to Minnesota, Minnesota to Mexico City, and I'm hopping around my critical core network to look at both directions. So I've got one path for each direction. Now you can see here that I've actually got a path here that is deviated from its reference. It's set up as yellow. That means there's something going on here. Let's take a look at this. And you can see from Austin to Minnesota, I'm hopping through Mexico City. Well, that's because I changed that OSPF configuration to actually reroute my traffic. If you take a look at my reference, the standard that I want to have is directly from Austin to Minnesota over a gig link. So I can use paths to very easily detect route symmetry. If I take this a step further, let's put this all together and I can pull this all into a dashboard. So I've got a dashboard now set up that's actually targeting a view that's got a number of paths in it, and these paths are all specific to route symmetry. And this dashboard hasn't updated itself yet, so I would actually see path changes here. Let's actually go ahead and do that. There we go. So the dashboard, this dashboard would update every 5 minutes. My paths are also updating every 5 minutes, so there might be a couple-minute delay given that overlap. But by refreshing my dashboard here, you can see that I've got, path deviations here, and you can see that from Minnesota to Austin, I'm going one way, but coming back, I'm taking a different route. I can also see that in terms of the events. So again, this is a way to take something that is a little bit harder problem to uncover and maybe solve, and I can actually leverage SurePath to get a very, very good visibility and a better solution for this. Let's take this even a level further, because in a case of route symmetry, I'd like to combine these paths together and look at this from the standpoint of a service. So I've gone in And I've defined, if I go take a look at the right tab here, there we go. I've got a view called Production Core Services, and I've got a service setup that is looking at route services. So I've actually got all my paths set up in here, and you can see very easily here that I've got a couple paths that have changed from, if I actually reflect this a little bit better, this should update itself. But what you're seeing here is that I've got two of my service elements that have gone degraded. Now if I give this a minute, the service definition here is going to change, and what I'll see is a service level event that's actually reflecting a degraded core routing services service function. And the reason for that is because I've got route symmetry issues going on in the network. So it's a way that I can take information about the network, I can leverage topology, and I can add on that the SurePath topology. So I'm looking at directional topology. How do I get from point A to point B? How do I get from point B to point A? And I can bubble that up from services or from paths directly into service definitions. So let's take a look at one final example. And this is one that actually came in from one of our customers. They asked us a question a few weeks ago about routing loops. And is there an opportunity to better expose when they have a routing loop on the network? Now, what is a routing loop? Most of the people, I think most of you that are on the call probably are familiar with this, but I'll review it just very quickly. In the case of trying to connect from, say, Mexico City to Brazil, I'm going to hop through my network. If I've got a routing loop, these are layer 3 devices, or these may be classic routers, but I'm going to go from one router to the next router out to wherever my destination is. In the case where I've got a routing loop, what will happen is instead of going from Austin to Sao Paulo, I may hop back to Mexico City, or I may hop back to Minnesota, and Minnesota will say, well, for me to get to Sao Paulo, I need to go back to Austin, and it's just going to hop back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. Now, if I actually saw this happening, because at the point this would happen, you're going to see a lot of your network devices fall off the network. Everything's going to go dark. You're going to see network outages on the outside of this. And to try to figure out why that is, sometimes, kind of the classic troubleshooting method is going to be figure out where it started and then do a trace route. And you'll see the hops in a trace route. Now, how can you leverage SurePath to even be more effective at that? Let's go in and actually create a loop. I'm going to use configuration management again, and I've actually got a loop that I'm going to create that goes in and sets a static route. But it's only setting a static route on a specific VLAN. So if I go to my topology here, I've got a number of VLANs that are sitting in Brazil. I've done a static route that is actually going to create a loop, but it's only going to create a loop for that one VLAN. So I'm talking to a different VLAN when I look at the loopback address on this router and most of the infrastructure. So if I look at the topology and the behavior of my network getting to my infrastructure devices, I'm going to be okay. But if I'm looking at the topology that says I need to get to these users in the 10.0.45 network, I'm going to have a problem because I just injected a route there, or a routing loop, given that static route. So to help solve this, and you can do this on the fly, or you can set up a number of these paths individually. If we go back to my path definition, you can see that I've got a loop test that's actually going to devices in VLAN 45, and I've got a route loop test that's looking at VLAN 50. So I can set this up very quickly if I needed to do something directly. Say I see a problem, I'll set up a test to see where this is actually happening. If I run discovery over this, and it'll take just a couple seconds to do that, because it's going in a loop right now. You can see that I've actually detected, I can see that I have a loop. I've got a loop detection right here. So I'm going from Minnesota to Austin, and by the way, I'm going back to Minnesota. I should be going directly out to Brazil and ultimately out to that set of users. So this is a way that you can identify, again, using a path change, that you may have some level of looping behavior. And in looking at this, you can see pretty quickly that you've got a loop going on. Now, what's also interesting is if I look at, let's go take a look and rerun discovery on my VLAN 50 loop, or 50 route. And we'll let this discover. And what you'll see with VLAN 50 is I'm happy. So it's not access to that remote site, it's access to a portion of that remote site. I've got a loop in part of it. I don't even have a loop in all of it. And I can even bubble that up a level further by adding this into a dashboard to compare the two side by side. So these are just some of the use cases, and again, as we speak with customers, and I'm sure as you're listening to this, you're probably asking some what-if questions. We'd certainly love to hear about those. But I think that covers the demonstration that I've got for today, so I'll turn it over to Kevin to speak about some of the training opportunities that we've got.
Thanks, Pete. Hi, everybody. So, can we get the presentation slides back again?
There you go.
Okay, that seems to have worked. Okay, so I just wanted to take a few minutes to go through the training courses that we offer and also talk a little bit about how those courses can be delivered. So first off, let's just have a look at the courses we currently offer. So I've listed them out here. So the Intuity Fundamentals course essentially is it's a course for users, and it really covers all of the different parts of the product, and I guess it's really aimed at, in fact it used to be called the read-only users course at one stage. So it really covers all of the functionality where you can just view stuff, but you're not actually setting stuff up or changing stuff around. So it's quite useful if for users that just need to go and have a look at network information and so on, see how things are going, but don't really need to sort of fundamentally move things around and so on. And then building on top of that, we've got the Putting Intuity to Work course. So this kind of, as I said, builds on top of the Intuity Fundamentals course and starts to introduce all of the ways that you can customize and set things up within the product and so on. Then the next course, which is probably where the first two courses are probably courses that most users would want to do. Maybe some would just want to do the fundamentals course, and other users who need more functionality and so on would use the second course. The report builder probably gets to be a little bit more optional, in that you'd want to go on this course if you actually want to build your own reports. So this is really what this course covers, and it goes from generating pretty simple tabular reports, so if you want to do the classic sort of device inventory report and you want to introduce specific columns and so on in that report, so it goes from that report and right the way up to being able to take several reports that you defined and put them all together into a big combination report. We also along the way introduce a little bit of so most of the report builder is kind of UI driven, pretty clever stuff with that. So if you want to be able to build custom reports for Intuity, then this is the course for you. Then the next course, so I've called this Admin 1, so it's the Intuity Event Management System. So Intuity has an event management system. So what does that mean? So what that means is that we can feed lots of alarms into Intuity, and also Intuity looks at the data that it's polling and can raise its own alarms based on that information. So what you want is a system that can look at all of those alarms and basically eke out the important stuff, and then raise what we call incidents, which is kind of I suppose a little bit more like a a sort of a trouble ticket, whatever, if you like. So it raises those incidents. Now, out of the box, Intuity, the event management system, will do kind of pretty much 90% of what most people want, but it's completely configurable, and the Intuity event management system course teaches you how to reconfigure the system to do exactly what you want. So again, it's a pretty intensive day, but very interesting. Probably I've taught this course a number of times. It's probably one of my favourite courses to teach, along with the report builder course. We then, the last two courses, which is kind of really one course, but I've split it into two for reasons that will become obvious on the next slide. So on the last course, the Admin 2 course, we cover installation and upgrade. Okay, so this is really for people that are going to be building Intuity servers and upgrading them and so on. And there's probably a little bit of sort of maintenance type stuff built into there as well. And then the second part to that course is I've called Authentication, Permissions and LDAP. So this really covers stuff like setting up user permissions. So this is kind of like giving users access to various different tools and so on. And it also covers external authentication. So this is useful if you've got a number of Intuity servers. What you don't want is to have to manage users individually on each server. So what you can do is you can connect up to an external authentication system using the LDAP protocol, and then all your user management is taken care of in one place. So this second part of the course really covers setting all that up. Okay, so let me fight the system again. So delivery options. So there's a couple of ways that these courses can be delivered. And the first option is the more, I guess, traditional instructor-led. So we can provide an instructor to take you through these courses. In fact, all the courses I've just shown you. And these courses we can deliver instructor-led courses in two ways. So I've kind of put it on the slide here really. So we can either do a classroom-based course. So this is where either the instructor would travel to you, or you could travel to us, and we'll all sit down in the classroom and we do the course like that. Or we can deliver the course over the web using WebEx is our usual tool of choice. And then finally, we can deliver the courses, well, not all the courses. So the first course, so the Intuity Fundamentals course, we can deliver as a self-paced course. So you can come along to the Training Academy website, you can log in and you can navigate through to the courses, and then you can take the courses in your own time. Now the self-paced course is basically, everyone says free, but obviously it relies on you having an Intuity support contract. So all the time you've got a valid Intuity support contract, you can come in here and you can either redo the courses or do new courses or whatever. The other course that we've got is it's the first part of the admin course. So we've got the installation and upgrade part of that course. And obviously over time we intend to add more and more courses into the self-paced selection here. So how do you kind of get access to these courses? Well, you'll have to log on to the Training Academy, and you'll need an account to do that. So there's actually probably a few ways that you can do that. So we've provided a create account button you can see on there. So if you click on that, it'll present a little form where it just asks, I think it just asks for your name and your email address, and then what happens is that the guys that process this will get a little message, and they will then, in fact it's actually our support team that actually manage this, add your account into the system, and then you'll get an email back from them, and then from then on you'll be able to log on to the system and access the training. So I think that's pretty much all from me. So I will hand back to Larry, I guess, for the Q&A session.
Thank you, Kevin. Do we have any questions that came in?
Yes, Larry, we have a few. The first question is regarding SurePath. How does SurePath work in a multi-server environment?
Okay, Pete, you want to take that one?
Sure. So one of the things that you'll want to focus on is use your consolidation server to do the path administration. The consolidation server has got access to all of the devices that are on your individual polling servers. So in the case where you've got a path that is leveraging devices that are sitting on different servers, that works just fine, because one of the things that you'll see is to get from device A to device B, we're going to look and see what do we know about device A and B, and we're going to look at all the individual servers to get information about that. So we'll easily hop from one, across your multi-server environment when we're identifying some of those path items.
And another one relative to SurePath. On the actual path diagram, I noticed that there's a red triangle. What does that mean?
Do you want to show that, Pete? I can give you a presentation.
Sure, that's a good idea. Let me share out my desk. All right, let's find a path. Go to our path summary. Let's go to our favorite Brazil path. So yeah, this diagram, or this little triangle right here, this is actually highlighting the link that has got the lowest available capacity. So if I'm looking at capacity of, 100 megabit capacity here, if I'm looking at Austin to Minnesota, I'm seeing, gigabit capacity here. This would actually be my slowest link. If I hover over this one, this is where I see I've got a 1 meg link. So across the path, the red triangle right here is going to the section in that segment in the path that's got the lowest spare capacity.
Okay, thanks, Pete. And then we have a question for Kevin. What course would you recommend to a new user?
Okay, so if you've just got your Intuity server up and running or what have you, and you want to learn learn all the basics, then obviously the user one training course is the one to start with. And then really the courses, they kind of build on top of one another. So you'll learn stuff in the user one course which you'll then make use of in the user two course. So they kind of do tend to kind of build on top of one another like that.
Okay, thanks, Kevin.
Just to wrap everything up for today, we'll send you a video link of today's presentation for your use once we complete it. If you have any questions about today's content, please be sure to contact your Entuity systems engineer. Our upcoming event calendar, March 2nd is BMC Digital Day in Chicago, for those of you attending here from the U.S. And the next Tech Talk is on March 29th, and we'll cover highlights of 16.5 Patch 1. If you have any questions or want to submit topics for future Tech Talks, you can send an email to tech.talks@intuity.com. Thanks for attending the presentation today.